New reporting from the Washington Post indicates that Mike Waltz's departure from President Trump's National Security Council may have been months in the making.
According to the report, Trump's issues with Walz began in early February when he allegedly met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about military operations against Iran. According to one of the Post's sources, Walz, quote, wanted to take U.S. policy in a direction Trump wasn't comfortable with because the U.S. hadn't attempted a diplomatic solution. The report says Walz's fate was later sealed by the inclusion of a journalist in a sensitive Signal chat a month later.
In the meantime, Waltz's departure has allegedly left some White House officials questioning whether a national security advisor is needed. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has assumed the role of acting national security advisor on top of his primary role leading the State Department, and others assumed roles in charge of USAID and also the National Archives. Democratic Senator and Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee Mark Warner said he's concerned it would be too much for Rubio.
I don't know how anybody could do these two big jobs, and they're frankly very different. One is actually trying to diplomatically work with friends and adversaries around the world. The other, around national security advisor, has really grown into a major job. I don't see how any individual could do both of those. And then you add the other fact, Jake, that he's still overseeing the remnants of what used to be American soft power for 70 years, USAID, and even for a Marco Rubio, I think it's too much.
According to Axios, all of Rubio's hats give him a level of power that no U.S. official has held since Henry Kissinger.
Rubio is going to be the next interim president when Trump goes on vacation this summer. He has so many jobs.
He has a lot of jobs, and he seems to be well appreciated by people on the other side of the aisle for some reason. I find that very interesting, that he is certainly better liked by Democrats than anyone else in the Trump administration. I frankly find that a little suspicious, and would not necessarily, from a more Trumpian America First perspective, if the Democrats, who are the enemies of your foreign policy, like the person you put in charge of running it, maybe that should lead to some questions. Questions Trump was correct to ask of Mike Waltz. I find this fascinating and good. Mike Waltz was negotiating with Netanyahu on behalf of greater military confrontation with Iran without Trump's knowledge. That was what the takeaway is for me. Now, I don't know why Mike Waltz ends up getting a promotion instead of just fired, as he should have been.
Oh, I know.
So yes, I am outraged that he's not been fired. He has gotten a promotion, but Trump's instinct that this is someone who is working contrary to the America First foreign policy objective was correct.
So Trump doesn't like when people don't listen to him, right? He likes loyalists. We understand that. But what he doesn't like more is creating an enemy in his second term, somebody that can go blabbing around about the inner workings of his cabinet. And so firing Mike Waltz is creating a potential risk for somebody who's trying to build out this second term, which has been rather tumultuous. And so I think Trump understands that while he doesn't appreciate what he's done, he's definitely not going to cower to, you know, what you describe as mainstream media, who's constantly criticizing his selections. And so this is somebody that he wanted to be in that position. He won't say it's a mistake when interviewed, even by our own News Nation staff. And so that, to me, is concerning. But I understand the bigger picture is that he doesn't want to be wrong. He will not be wrong, and he definitely won't cower to media in any way.
But I just think I think, and by we, I mean not we, but the mainstream media, is just getting lost in very petty details about a hugely consequential foreign policy decision, whether to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities or have diplomacy with them and try to go a different way. That is a hugely consequential policy decision, way more consequential than anything else going on in the Trump administration or the government right now. I think, because I oppose military intervention and because I see what we've done in the Middle East with Iraq and Syria and Libya and Afghanistan, and think all of those things were catastrophic mistakes that we now regret doing, led by hawks in both parties. I have learned from that experience, and so think greater military confrontation with Iran would be a cataclysmically bad idea. Thankfully, there are some in the conservative MAGA movement, many in the conservative MAGA movement, who similarly are against it, including Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson and Thomas Massie and Rand Paul and J.D. Vance, I think, from what I can gather of his comments that I see in some of the Signal chats I wasn't supposed to see, and that's a good thing. But Mike Waltz was clearly agitating for greater confrontation. Maybe Hegseth is too, and maybe Rubio is too. I don't really know for sure. I don't know exactly where everybody stands, but I know where Trump stands, and I know where J.D. Vance stands, and I hope they figure it out and get personnel in who share that vision. And then otherwise, I don't really care about the details. I don't care if Mark Rubio does 18 different jobs as long as he's not focused on war with Iran. Unfortunately, I think he's one of the more hawkish figures, so then I don't really care about his competence because I think it's competence for a project that will be bad.
Well, I think the bigger picture issue is confidence shakeup. So internationally, if the world doesn't know what we're doing on the cusp of Trump about to take his first trip to the Middle East, the same part of the world where you said you disagree with a lot of the decisions made by past presidents.
I mean, don't all of us? Don't we all look back at that and not remember it fondly?
For sure. It could have been handled way better. And I think that, as he's embarking on this trip, trying to, have diplomatic relationships over there, to look at us and say that we're switching roles in this critical time, obviously there was a big problem, and they're not saying what it was, right? We know the reporting shows that there was a big problem. But the bigger issue is that confidence is not going to grow, because when you look at all the presidents of the past, so Biden, he had one national security advisor over his 4-year term. Obama had 3 in 2 terms, that's 8 years. And then Clinton and Bush both had 2 in their 8-year terms. This will be Trump's 6th national security advisor, and he's not even deep into his 2nd term. This is ridiculous. And so when I talk about how the world's looking at us, isn't that problematic to you that we're moving on to the 6th one?
I don't
And
care.
the decision falls, heavy is the head that wears the crown. The decision falls on President Trump to be picking the right people. He doesn't want to be criticized for his picks. He jammed everyone through that had to be voted on by the Senate. And so even though Walz wasn't voted in, this is still a problem with how he's picking and rushing people who are unqualified for roles. And it's going to, to me, be a bad reflection for the entire administration if this final 6th one is not the last one.
I mean, I'd rather have 6 people that don't want war with Iran than 2 people who do. Now, I think, unfortunately, he's gone through so many because, for whatever reason, in the national security sector, you end up bringing in people who swear they're going to go with America first and then end up doing something different.
And he's the only one with that issue, because everyone else had 2 or 3.
Well, no, everyone else, they're all they're all establishment, deep state, foreign policy blob people, and they get a fellow blob member to do their blob politics of needless regime change and escalation all around the globe, and so there's no conflict. Trump has conflict with the person because he actually wants them to do something different and contrary to the interests of the deep state, but time and time again, we don't actually get the right person in that position.
Well, like Caroline Levitt said, boys will be boys. I guess we'll just keep letting boys run up.
Well, it's not. I mean, they can disagree. They can argue about policy. I think that's better than everyone being on board with a policy that is bad. I care more about what the actual policy is. I don't care if they fight in public or private. I don't care if they call each other meanie heads. I don't care about that. I just care about what the government actually does.
And I care that
think we get lost
America
in the
is not
details.
a joke abroad and right here to our own citizens.
All right.
Well, next up on Rising, New York Magazine's shocking report on Democratic Senator John Fetterman.